Hi, and welcome to the A Little Spoon Kitchen. Today we're going to be making cranberry-orange cream scones. This is a holiday favorite. Honestly, it's an all around the year favorite. I do, in fact, purchase bags and bags of cranberries when they go on sale after Thanksgiving so that I can keep them in my freezer and make these all the time. They're light and soft, and you get a little bit of the tang from the cranberry, little sugar, orange sugar topping, nice and crunchy. It's got a lot of different flavors, a lot of different textures, and all of them come together in what I think is a fantastic scone, if I do say so myself. I have done a couple of things with the ingredients that we will talk about as I'm cooking, namely and mainly, I've got 00 flour instead of just regular all-purpose flour. Can you use all-purpose flour? Yes, you can. But I will explain a lot about why I changed up the type of flour that I use. I have some powdered milk in my scones as well. And then we're actually using a specific kind of baking powder, and I'll talk a little bit more about what I did with that. If you have purchased ingredients and you are cooking with me today for my cook-along, welcome. For anybody who is finding this video after the fact, this was previously alive. I am going to be talking to my chat over here on my computer. They are going to ask questions outside of the things that I am talking about. Hopefully, as you cook along, if you decide to cook along with me after this video is in a playlist and is no longer live, they might have answered or asked some questions that you have. And so it's not just me up here talking. There's a little bit more back and forth. And hopefully whatever pops into your head, somebody else asked, and I went ahead and I've already given you the response for that. If not, you can always comment underneath the video. And I am kind of following along and getting notified. If I see a comment, I will reply to you. So ask questions. Even if this isn't live, you are welcome to. That is a-okay. You can find the recipe. It is linked down below, but also I do have the ingredients kind of listed, so you can follow along with the ingredients. Also, you can follow the link to my website. It's alittlespoon.com, and there are plenty of recipes there for you. Also, this one, again, cranberry-orange cream scones. I would like to get started now, so let's do this. Now, the first thing in the recipe that was originally listed is the orange and orange sugar topping, this orange zest with brown sugar. I'm actually going to cut the butter first just because I want to get it into the freezer as soon as possible. So I'm going to run and grab that real quick out of my refrigerator. And we are going to do a ½ cup or 113 grams of a European-style butter. I prefer European-style butters to traditional American butters just because it doesn't have as much water in it. And so you get more fat, yay, more flavor, and they're richer scones than you would if you were using an American-style butter. So we're going to go ahead and measure this out. This recipe makes 8 very large scones. Today, I'm going to be actually shaping 16. So we're kind of taking the main dough, cutting it in half, and then turning that into 16 scones. I'm going to see some friends later, and I think it would be best if I made some smaller scones so they didn't have to eat whole ones. We're going to be good about that. So you'll get to see me shape these twice, which I figured would be helpful. Let's see. So basically what I'm doing, I'm going to cut this in half, get my correct weight, and then I'm going to put this directly into, I'm going to cut them into some smaller pieces. I'm going to put them in my freezer to get really chilly. Okay. And that way when we put the flour, our dry ingredients, and our cold butter pieces together, in a food processor later on. They won't just get blended into the flour, and we'll have nice pieces of butter that are going to create pockets for steam. It's going to help with rise, and it's going to help with texture. So we want the butter as cold as possible. And the thing about European butter too is because it's got such a high fat content, it also stays softer almost at all times. Like I just took this out of the refrigerator and I can already kind of like push that and mess with it. So I want this to be in the freezer for as long as possible. Try to get it as cold as I can. Okay. So now that we've got this cut up and kind of broken apart, it's okay if they're touching, like if the pieces of butter are touching, but you don't want them to be like completely stuck to each other because you want them to separate well into your flour. So you don't just have like one lump of butter rolling around, right? Okay. So we've got our butter. It's going to go right into my freezer. Okay. And now we're going to do the topping. So I actually do this twice. And the way that the recipe is written online, I've done kind of the topping and then set aside, and then I do this again and it goes into the dough. I'm just for like efficiency's sake, I'm actually going to make both of them right now and then set them kind of both aside and use them as I need them. It was easier to write the instructions so that you were doing like one thing at a time, but it is in fact more efficient to just do a single task and then like have them separate. So the topping itself is going to do a 1/4 cup, about 60 grams of brown sugar. It doesn't matter if it's light brown sugar. It doesn't matter if it's dark brown sugar. The amount of molasses that is in the sugar really doesn't matter for this recipe, especially like it not in the dough or as a topping. Like as a topping, it's kind of like whatever. So you really don't have to worry about what you grabbed if you got light or dark. It's not important. Just brown sugar is fine. And you're going to use about a 1/4 cup for the topping. I think I already said that it was 60 grams. And we're going to zest a single orange. And I've just got these like kind of medium navel oranges. If you have like little satsumas or halos or clementines or whatever they're called, then you can maybe 2, 3 of those are about the same as this. Probably got 2, 2.5. And you've got what you need. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this because it's faster than using, I'm going to use my kitchen scale because it's faster than using a measuring cup. There, we got it. Okay, Offie Bunny says, for Kerrygold, we use it for everything. Do we need to find like a specific package, or is that all European butter? It's all European butter. It's going to have more than 30% fat, and that's the important part. All European style butter is over 30%. Okay, that was almost exactly how much I needed. Look at that. Okay, so this essentially is for my topping. And then for the dough, it's 1/3 cup, which is about 75 grams. %, you have the same bowls. These bowls are great. We bought them for the kids when they were little to feed them all sorts of baby foods that we were making. And they're just the exact size that I need all the time. Okay. No more brown sugar. So essentially this is for the dough. This is for the topping. I'm going to go ahead and zest my oranges. And then the leftover, right? So your zested oranges are then going to get used in your cranberry jelly. That's why you got them, because they're the perfect size. And they come in like, it's like 4 or 5 bowls or something like that in a pack. And they're super cheap. They're just so good. Like if I'm making like sauces or like smaller kind of things like this, where it's like, it's just big enough that I can do something substantial with it, but also small enough that I'm not like filling up our dishwasher with a whole bunch of stuff. It's great. Essentially what we're doing here with the zest and the sugar, we're going to, I know you've probably seen it. If you bake and you're coming in here, if you're here with me in the live, or if you're finding this video at a later date and you bake quite often and you're doing things that include citrus, so like usually something with lemon, you'll probably see in like cakes and cookies and icings and stuff that people will do this, like other bloggers and stuff will do this, where they tell you to zest and then kind of rub the sugar and the zest together. Essentially what they're doing is they're making an oleosaccharum. They're pulling oleo meaning oil, saccharum meaning sweet, so sugar. Essentially what you're doing is you're pulling out all of the oils from the peel, from the skin of your citrus, and it just really gives a boost in flavor to the dough or the icing or whatever that you are making. It's just a quick way to do that. I would not recommend, I know I just said oleosaccharum, I would not recommend doing a traditional oleosaccharum like for cocktails this way. That you're supposed to have like full peels, just because this will actually start to turn bitter really fast if you're letting it break down into like a liquid. It doesn't hold up as well. If you're letting it sit and you're trying to get it into like a true oleosaccharum, having a full peel will retain its shape, and then you're just getting the oil instead of getting like the entire peel into what you're doing, because this like almost disintegrates, and then you get that kind of bitter taste, and that's not what we want. This is tons and tons of sugar with just a tad bit of zest, and it doesn't last long enough. It's getting baked into stuff, like it's not a huge deal. But for the oleosaccharum for the cocktails, it's like it's not the best way to do it. Do the whole peel. And I do have that as a recipe on the website at alittlespoon.com if you want to use oleosaccharum in cocktails or for other syrups or things like that. It's really good to make lemon oleosaccharum for lemonade. Oh my God, that's like the best lemonade. Oh no. My son joined the YouTube chat. I also love lemonade. It's a favorite for sure. I like anything, honestly, all sorts of like tart juices. I really like cranberry juice and cranberries in general. I really like lemonade. I love tamarind. So like tamarind teas and stuff like that. It's so good. Trying real hard not to grate my fingers right now. This guy is getting slippery. Okay. So essentially what we're going to do now that we've got our zest and our brown sugar, we're going to kind of just take our fingers and we're going to massage the zest with the sugar and break up any clumps that you have in your brown sugar. I have quite a few. You're just going to kind of break that up. It will immediately start getting, this is not a word. Whatever. It'll start, no. Back. You're not allowed on here.
Hey.
Sorry, my daughter just tried to join us. So it will start to get wet. That's okay. That's what it's supposed to do, is pulling, again, it's pulling the moisture, pulling the oil out of your zest, the sugar is. And so it is going to look kind of sandy. I don't know if you can see, kind of see my fingers. It's going to look kind of sandy and almost start to get a little translucent just because of the moisture. Okay. There you go. So that's the first batch. I totally don't. Which one of these weighs more? I forgot which one was the topping and which one is the... This one is the filling. This one is for the topping. I'm going to set this aside. Our topping is over here now so that I don't lose track. And then we're going to go ahead and also do the same thing. Break up any of your brown sugar pieces and kind of just rub your fingers and the zest and the sugar all together. Yes, I have. I've had a YouTube channel. I have had a YouTube channel. I actually also have a Twitch channel, but I am not going to, I probably won't ever stream enough to like get affiliated or like have a situation where I'm allowed subscriptions or any of that. So we are streaming in both platforms so that the YouTube is the one. The YouTube platform is kind of the streaming platform. And then we just have kind of a bonus stream for my husband. Does it really? Well, maybe Chuck can fix that. Okay, so again, we're just gonna kind of rub as much off of our fingers as we can. And this is gonna get set aside, and this is gonna go in the dough later. I'm gonna wash my hands real quick. All right, the next thing that we're gonna do is the cranberry jam. Okay. We're gonna take our oranges, I'm gonna move them over to this tray, and then I'm gonna set this guy aside. Okay. Okay, so you're gonna need about 80 grams of cranberries, about 3/4 of a cup of cranberries. You can take, oop, that was way too much. You can take your cranberries right from the freezer. You don't need to. I was talking to a Patreon member earlier this morning, and they thought they needed fresh cranberries. And while these are still fresh, they are in fact frozen. And they can even be old. Like it's really not a big deal. You're boiling it down into nothing. So they can be frozen. They can be room temperature. They can be kind of whatever you want them to be, as long as they are cranberries. And they're not like dried cranberries. We don't want craisins. We're going for cranberries. My goodness, how many extra did I put in here? There, that's good. Okay, and then we're also going to need about 50 grams of orange. Now, let's talk about this. I'm going to make, and I'll show you guys how to cut Supremes. We're going with Supremes. I'm pretty sure it's Supremes, but we're going to, whatever. It's fine. We'll say it exactly how it looks like it is spelled. And so we're going to be doing those. I'll show you how to cut them. But if that's not your cup of tea, if you're like, I don't want to do this, you can, like I said earlier, the clementines or the tangerines or the satsumas or whatever, the really easy peel ones, you can just like peel them and put them in. Peel as much of the pith and all of the kind of little fibers and stuff like that off as you can, and those can kind of get put in. I like doing the Supremes because if you maintain the cellular structure, right, of your orange, but you don't have any of that kind of fibrous outside, you're getting the pectin. Stick with me. You're getting the pectin, but you're not getting the added texture of that skin outside. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. But if you want, you can just juice them, okay? And you can do 50 grams of juice. And then it just has to come up to a higher temperature in order to get that same consistency. So instead of, I believe I have here 220 degrees or 104 Celsius, if you just have to go slightly higher, maybe up to like up a couple of degrees, and you'll be fine. Really up to you on how you feel like doing this. It's probably easier to just juice it and bring the temperature up higher. I just really like the texture, and I like having that a little bit of added pectin. It just thickens it better. So I'm going to go ahead and also cut these. I'm going to cut them over a plate. Can I get the camera, please? Cup of tea, scones, get it? Ha. I actually did not, pun unintended. Okay, so basically what you want to do, I'll do this on the plate and then we'll measure it out in here. Basically what you want to do is you're going to cut the top until you can see where all of the slices kind of would start. Do a little bit more on that one. Okay, and then you're going to cut along the pith. So I'm basically taking my knife and I'm going to kind of just curve around, and I'm going to cut around from top to bottom. And you can do multiple cuts. It doesn't have to be perfection. But you're basically just taking off as much of the pith as you can and getting as close to the fruit as you can without cutting too much of it off. And you're just going to go all the way around. And if you have any extra little white spots, that's okay. Just slide your knife under them, cut them off. Kind of like using a peeler. And again, just top to bottom, just follow the curve of your fruit. I do plan to make a salad recipe that uses Supremes, I'm not sure, that uses these in a salad recipe in a couple months. So fair warning, if you want to make that salad recipe, it's a good idea to just learn now with me, right? That one was a little bit, I might have to eat that little piece there. And then what you're going to do, you can see all of our little separations here, this membrane, and you can see the lines. And what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of cut right to the center in a diagonal motion, and then we're going to pull it out. And there's our Supreme. That was our first one. Let's make sure that we are weighing everything appropriately. Pith is a fun word. I agree. How often do we sharpen and hone knives? I tend to hone my knives every couple of days. Like I'll just go to use them if I know that I'm doing something that I need like precision. I'll go ahead and kind of hone them. I think we sharpen them once a month, give or take. I need 50 grams of this. I think I've listed it as about a quarter cut. It's basically one orange, if that's helpful. One medium-sized orange. And if I do need more, I have a second orange. But yeah, you're just gonna go on either side of the membrane and just stay kind of in between each one each time, right? So I've done inside, inside, and then the same thing. So I'm gonna do inside, so to the left of the left membrane, to the right of the right membrane. And you're just gonna kind of go at an angle until you have that. It is not difficult. You can, in fact, do this. I promise. And then it looks super fancy and you boil it down into jam and nobody knows you even did all this hard work. But if you ever want to make a salad or something that looks really fancy, and some for me. Chef tax. They are satisfying. Look how pretty. They're very satisfying. Okay. So now we have our oranges, we have our cranberries. We're going to add some sugar. I'm going to do a half of a cup of refined sugar. So you're looking for your white sugar, white granulated sugar. I am using this sugar for a specific reason. Does it have anything to do with whether or not this is going to be a good jam? No. It is basically a flavor reason. If you like to use unrefined sugar and that's all you keep in your house, if you like turbinado or demerara or any of the other sugars, all of them are welcome. I just think you get a cleaner, sharper flavor when there is no like molasses or other kind of byproducts on the sugar. So this is going to keep that tart cranberry flavor. You're not getting anything that's kind of going to add a more caramelized flavor that's going to kind of dampen down the tartness. So yes, that is the only reason that I'm using the sugar. If you wanted to use brown sugar, you could use brown sugar. Not a big deal. I also like sugar. Okay, so this is a half a cup. I'm just gonna, am I gonna do this? No. No, I'm not even gonna use a measuring cup. I know I could, but I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna weigh this out. So it's a half a cup, about 112.5 grams of this sugar. Just easier. Okay. Gonna move this aside. And we'll come back to this when we get to the dough. And I'm going to make some cranberry jam. Okay. So now we've got our pot on our little cooktop here. Gonna get her going. And I am going to essentially cook this down until like we'll start hearing you're gonna start hearing the cranberries popping. It's gonna start to look really liquidy and rustic and really nice. You can do one of two things in this situation. You can cook this until you hear that popping and it starts to really get kind of soupy, right? And we're turning it into a sauce. You can put that in a blender, blend it all up, and get it really, really nice and smooth. And then put that back into your pot and bring that up to the temperature that it needs to get to. And then set it aside to get used as that spreadable layer, right? This spreadable kind of jam that we're putting into our scones. Or you can do what I'm kind of going to do today because it's a lot of work. You kind of, if you put it in the blender, you will lose some. So you have less jam to go around because I have never in the history of using a blender ever gotten everything out of the blender when I've poured like whatever sauce, soup, something that I'm making in it. And so I don't want to lose the jam. So I just tend to leave it as like this rustic thing, this rustic kind of sauce that I make. And I'm fine with that. Doesn't bother me. I didn't want, for this specific recipe, I didn't want to have like full cranberries in there kind of cooking and like, then you like bite into them the way that like you do like blueberry muffins sometimes and you bite into them and it's like you bite through the skin and they pop. My texture issues do not let me do that. So I was like, well, what's the next best thing? I'm going to go ahead and just make them into like a rustic jam that then you can't really tell the texture because it's jam and it's like a layer and not individual cranberries. And that's what I did. So that is what I did. You're going to have this on like medium and just kind of let it slowly come up to temperature. This is a little hotter, honestly, than I would like, but I'm not used to using this cooktop compared to my one behind me. So we're just going with it. Started a little high, but I brought it down. And I'm actually going to grab my bench scraper and use that to get this sugar off of here because I want to be able to use all of this. There we go. And we're just going to kind of let that melt down and boil away. This is going to take some time. It takes like somewhere between 5 and 15 minutes depending on how like crazy you get, how crazy fast you're trying to make it happen. I usually land somewhere around 10. Yeah. So you can see we're like bubbling. The sugar is melting. Everything is getting super liquidy, and that is what we want. Very festive, right? Smells really good already, to be honest. If you do, like I said earlier, if you do want to mellow this out, like if cranberry is maybe a little too strong of a flavor for you, even with the orange and the sugar, you can, like I said earlier, use a different kind of sugar. You can also add some vanilla. That would also be helpful. I only have a plastic bench scraper. I honestly should also have a metal one. They have, but not the ones, there are metal ones that have, it's kind of like metal and then it's got like a curl of the metal and it kind of becomes a handle. I don't like those because then you're only kind of gripping on one side and it's a little awkward. The metal bench scrapers that have just like the wood block on top, excellent. They're great for cutting. So like if you're cutting butter into pastry, or if you're just trying to like mix without using your hands, or if you're like literally cutting like gnocchi or something like that, they're great. Like metal just has a nice edge. And make sure you are looking at the edge of your bench scraper. The finer the edge, the better that you're going to have. But my preference in bench scrapers is a plastic one. I like that they're flexible. I like that I can move them around. They work for almost everything. They're not great. They're not great for cutting, but they're great for everything else. So I do prefer the plastic one. But if I had everything in my kitchen, then there would probably be a second bench scraper that was a metal one. You could also add some cinnamon. You could. I would say if you add cinnamon to the jam, I would probably also add it to either the topping or the dough. But then you're making a different scone, right? But that is totally cool. You want to add some maybe ginger. You can add some ginger to this. You can add a whole bunch of other flavors, and it would not mess. It wouldn't mess with any like spices, and even just like I said, ginger, like a tad of ginger. Maybe like a gram, or like if you did like a teaspoon of ginger or something like that, or a half a teaspoon of ginger, like grated, it would melt right into this, and that would probably be absolutely delicious. You can change up your flavors very easily. You could do a blueberry lemon scone and have a lemon sugared topping and blueberry and lemon situation here. Do the same thing. You'd be good to go. Oh, a wooden bench scraper. That's also flexible. That's cool. I have never seen one of those in my life. You broke a plastic one? Oh, wow. All right, these are about to start popping on me. I'm going to bring the temperature up now that I've got enough liquid in this pan. The temperature is going to have to come up a little, like pretty high. It is going to come up. Okay, so candy making 101. It is going to come up above boiling point, right? So you're getting above your 212 Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius. You're getting above that. And you want it to come up to what we call a softball texture, which essentially, oh, we're popping. I don't know if you guys can hear that. So essentially what that is that spreadable kind of jelly jam texture. So essentially what we're doing, right, is all of the water that we have in our cranberries, in the oranges, even in the sugar, has to kind of boil out so it can go past boiling and come up into that from like 112 up into the 212, right? So that 100 degrees, 212 to come up into that 220 or 104 Celsius. We want to get that up into that stage. We're boiling out all of the water now. So now it's just going to boil. Everything's going to pop. It's going to turn into kind of like a rustic sauce. And then we're going to let it continue to boil until it gets to the temperature that we need to get it to. No, we're not doing a hard crack. That is too high of a temperature. And I don't think that would make a very good scone. I think that would be a problem. Yeah, it's trying to think. You have it's softball and then hardball, which is like the temperature of like a caramel candy kind of a thing, where it's like you're not spreadable but still really soft. And then you go into like threads, where like if you pulled the sugar, it would kind of thread into like those really fine kind of like cotton candy. And then you get into like the hard crack kind of like candy coatings where it like cracks and shatters. There's a lot of different categories. I just don't know them all. Cranberry sauce is super easy. There's no science about it. Don't worry about it. It's so easy. I'll post it somewhere, maybe in another Discord or something like that. I have a cranberry sauce recipe and it's super easy. Honestly, it's basically this. Who are we kidding? If you want to give everything a stir and just like kind of break it down a little bit, you are welcome to. It's not important, but you can. I'm just doing it to move things along. I am seeing this start to thicken a little bit. So I feel like we're getting to a relatively good temperature, which is kind of why I started helping this along. Let me check my temperature. If you want to test, here, let me grab out one of these guys. If you want to test whether or not you're at the point that you need to be at, you can get a really cold plate and stick it, or like a plate and stick it in your freezer, and then pull that out, and you would basically drop some of this onto a really cold plate. I'm just putting a ice pack on my countertop so that it gets nice and cold. Honestly, I could pour it probably right onto this and just see kind of what it does, right? So if you get it to the temperature you need it to be, what consistency does it turn into? And if it turns into the right consistency, then you have it right. There's also a test that you can do where you have ice water and you would like kind of drip some sauce into the ice water and see if it threads or see if it clumps or any of that kind of stuff. And that also tells you the texture and consistency that you need. We are there. Okay, 220. We hit it. Double check. Yeah. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I feel like taking a whisk to this. I just want to break this up a little bit more. Because I've got something that's like super rustic right now. If I really wanted this to be like really broken up, I could also get like an immersion blender and do like a stick blender situation. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm just gonna break this up a little bit with this whisk. You could use a fork. I just want to make sure that I have something that's spreadable when it comes time to do my layers. And I have nothing else that I need to cook, so I'm going to move this guy out of the way. I'm going to drop just a little bit on there and see what that does. Yeah. Yum. If you're not liking, because like I said, like there are so many different textures to this. You can blend it. You can in a full blender. You can do a stick blender. You can do whatever you want to do. If you also just leave this to just like gently boil at a low temperature, right? So you're not like if you let this go low and slow instead of trying to get it into that like 15-minute window, it will also break down even further. So if, depending on how you want to do it, there's also a way to like, without pulling out a blender, get it into a different texture. But I actually really like this. So this is like kind of rustic. You're not going to have any of those like pieces of fruit. You're going to have just kind of like a jelly jam. What is this? This is marmalade, technically, right? Because it has the skin of the fruit in it. So it's kind of like marmalade. Okay, now I've got that broken up as much as I want. And I am going to move that off to the side. I'm going to scrape the sides of the bowl. Yeah. And that's like nice. And this is like almost like if I were going to make like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich kind of consistency. Because I want it to be thick enough, right? You're going to want it to be thick enough that that it's not going to like seep kind of out of the sides of your scone. But you want it to be thin enough that you can spread it. I have tempered chocolate. Yeah. It's super precise. And each chocolate, like depending on the amount of cocoa butter you have, like the chocolate it's like a different temperature for each one. So you have to like really be precise with it. Yeah, the thing about cranberry sauce, do I do this? Okay, so hold on. I'm going off script. Oh no. I have cranberry sauce in the refrigerator that's left over. The thing about cranberries and then also citrus is they have a lot of pectin. And so even if you're not bringing it up to a temperature, like this is the consistency of like a cranberry sauce. If you're not paying attention to texture or temperature and all you're doing is getting the cranberries to like pop. And takes like 15 minutes and then it just kind of sets into like a thick sauce in your refrigerator. It is a little too thin. Like if you're just letting it boil until it gets to where the cranberries pop, and then I prefer to at that point I will use a blender, and the blender is going to release the pectin more than this will. So I'm using temperature, right? I'm using temperature to get this kind of gel consistency, this spreadable gel consistency here. For that, I'm blending so that the pectin creates the thickness. And so that's kind of the difference, at least in my brain, between a sauce and then something that is thicker than a sauce and getting into that kind of jelly consistency. Okay. Moving on. Moving on. I've got my topping set aside. I'm going to set this guy aside. I'm going to let it cool. And we're going to get into the dough. So first, we've already got in the recipe online, it says at this point to do the butter. I've already got the butter in my freezer. If you are following the recipe at home and you did wait for the butter, don't worry about it. It's okay. Like 10 minutes in the freezer is technically all that it needs. I'm just letting it stay in there for a little bit longer just to keep the butter together that much better, but it's not a huge deal. So don't worry about it. We're going to kind of set up our wet and our dry ingredients. I'm going to get another bowl. I need my wet ingredients first. We've got some cream and some sour cream. I like the tanginess of the sour cream. It's mainly why I'm using it. And it just adds a little bit of lightness and a little bit more acidity, right? So you get a little bit more rise than you would if it was like just cream. Okay. So we're going to do 2/3 of a cup, which is about 160 milliliters or 170 grams of heavy whipping cream or double cream. I'm not entirely sure what it's called in Europe. I think it's double cream. In the States, it's just whipping cream or heavy whipping cream. As long as it's got that high fat content and you can use it to make a whipped cream, that's what you need. I said what? What did I say? 170 grams. Okay. Okay. A little bit more than I want. I'm gonna take it out with a spoon. Okay. And then I also want 14 grams, 1 tablespoon of sour cream. I probably should do this in a separate bowl. We're going to just use hands to make sure that I don't go overboard. Oh, did I have the exact amount I needed? That's funny. Okay. Unnecessary. Okay. I'm going to, I used my whisk already. I'm going to get another whisk. Or just wash this one, I guess. And we're just going to whisk these ingredients together a little at a time until they're incorporated. So the thing about scone dough is that it comes together really, really fast, and it's difficult to try to incorporate each ingredient separately as they get added. So you kind of incorporate really well all your dry ingredients, incorporate really well all your wet ingredients, and then everything gets mixed together after those have been incorporated separately. There's not enough time to be like, okay, we're gonna cream butter and sugar, just like, like cookies, right? You cream butter and sugar, and then you add the eggs, and then you add this, and then you add that. Or for like cakes, it's not like that. It's a very, very quick situation. And so you don't have time to like incorporate each individual ingredient. You kind of do them in groups and then combine them separately. Okay, we're gonna get an egg. And I'm not gonna try to be fancy and do this one-handed. We're just gonna like crack an egg. I'm not doing it. Does anybody have any questions? Scones, they're like biscuits, but not. Scones are like a sweet biscuit. They're usually a little more, I mean, I guess, yeah, they're a sweet biscuit. Okay, and then we need a tablespoon of orange juice. For the sour cream, it was 1 tablespoon, which is about 14 grams. I'm actually going to slice this sucker in half and do a little squeeze. Probably could just, honestly. We're going to do this an easy way. Okay, so for those of you who are cooking with me, because I know there are several of you today, I'm just going to make this easy on myself and not have to deal with the seeds. So I cut the bottom of my orange off, and then I'm going to cut kind of like you would cut an apple, right? When you cut around the seeds, you cut around the core of an apple. I'm just going to cut one of the sides off. And then I have squeezable citrus with no seeds. I only need a tablespoon, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to just squeeze right into our measuring spoon. And that goes in. You're looking for about, I said 1 tablespoon, so that's 15 milliliters. It's about 15.5 grams if you're going by weight, if you're still using your kitchen scale. This gets set aside. So now we have our wet ingredients, and we're gonna do our dry ingredients. And actually, I'm gonna do my dry ingredients. This is what it's gonna get mixed in. I'm gonna do it in my food processor. Don't even need this. I'm gonna do this in my food processor because this is where we're gonna mix our butter and our dry ingredients before mixing everything together in that bowl or on a counter. If you really feel like getting messy, you can also do it directly on a counter. It is up to you. I prefer to get a kind of like semi-combined dough before I move to the counter, or I end up making a huge mess. And I'm trying to avoid that today. Okay, so for our dry ingredients, we are going to need 2 1/4 cups of double O flour. What is double O flour? Double O flour is essentially the same thing as, okay, it's not the same thing. Who are we kidding? Okay, so double O flour typically has less protein than all-purpose flour. This specific double O flour does not. They're around the same amount of protein content. I like to use the King Arthur flour. They have a double O. It's called pizza flour, but it's double O. And double O is essentially the size of the like leftover pieces of flour after it's been milled. So you have an all-purpose flour has a larger size, like granule size, and the double O is the smallest that you possibly can go. What does that mean? That means that it's going to hydrate better and faster. It's going to retain moisture longer, and it is also going to be, it's going to end up being softer because it's got about the same amount of protein, but typically double O has slightly less protein in it. So it's typically somewhere between like 9 and 11. I think this is like 10. This is like 10.5%. All-purpose flour is usually between 10 and 11%. So they're like this one specifically, the King Arthur brand is around the same thing as all-purpose, which is why this specific recipe says yes, you can kind of jump between the double O and an all-purpose. Because the protein content is the same, but the mill size, because it's smaller, is going to give you a softer situation, a softer scone. But also, the cool thing about double O is that it's typically made with a soft wheat. So all-purpose flours are made with hard wheat, with a winter wheat, which is drier and does give a harder crumb, and the double O does not. So something that you kind of have to think about is when you are purchasing your double O, I do suggest that you figure out what its protein content is. I did, in fact, I made these once with White Lily. White Lily is another brand of flour, and it is meant for biscuits. Hey, it's meant for like buttermilk biscuits, so the Southern style kind of like American Southern scone, for lack of better terminology. And it's meant for that because they used a soft wheat. Now, the mill size is not as fine as double O, but the soft wheat is kind of a nice medium. However, it's also around like 8 or 9% protein, which means these scones get almost a cakey texture, like they're super, super light. So the way that, and that is not a bad thing, it's just something that if you do use White Lily, you absolutely can, but it is going to be like cakier and much softer than what you get when you have a protein content that's like somewhere between 10 and like 11.5%. If I used bread flour, it would be a little bit even more dense than what I would be using if I was using an all-purpose or if I was using this specific double O. So I would check for your protein content and check to see maybe if you can, if it's like a soft wheat or a hard wheat, and use those things to help you. If you're doing something that has a lower protein content, you're going to get a softer scone. If you're doing something that has a higher protein content, you're going to get a denser, thicker scone. I like this happy medium. It's kind of like the nostalgic scone for me is slightly denser. It's not always about it having this really light cake texture. If I wanted that cake texture, I would make a cake. So that's kind of where I ended up where I did. But I do like that it uses soft wheat. I do like how much moisture retention I get using the smaller milled, like the smaller grained flour. And It's what I like. So yeah, so this is specifically King Arthur Double O. I have found other brands and have used other brands from grocery stores, but I do check their protein content before I decide what to do with them. If it's a really low protein content, I probably would do 60-40 or 70-30 on the split with the Double O flour and all-purpose flour. Just to make sure that the protein content is correct, because I think the protein content here is probably more important than anything else. And so if you did decide you were going to use White Lily, or you were going to use pastry flour or a Double O that is a lower percentage of protein, I'd probably go by weight. So you can use, I wouldn't do this by measuring by volume. But if you wanted to break it up and do 60% or 70% Double O with that lower protein, and then go to a regular all-purpose flour and do a 40% or a 30%, just figure out what those grams are and do that by percentages, and then you have something that's going to be closer to using the King Arthur. If you can't find it, just FYI. You like a bit of chew to your scone. I do too. I agree. Okay, so this is 2 1/4 cups of the Double O flour that I have, and that's about 288 grams. So we're gonna go ahead and measure this out. I know I just talked a lot. If that was not clear, please ask questions and I will attempt to clarify. Sometimes it's easier to answer questions than come up with them in your head and then try to respond to something. Right? It's always easier to edit than it is to write. Basically where we are. Come on. 2. Almost there. Oh, come on. It's just chilling. There. That's good enough. Okay. Was I ever a pro cook? No. Nope. This is good old-fashioned research and cooking since you were a kid with your family. All this talk about Double O flour makes you want to watch GoldenEye. Nice. If a recipe lists based on volume instead of weight, would you convert that based loose or packed flour? When you are baking, always assume that flour is loose. Always assume. And essentially what you're going to do, if they don't give it by grams and they're only giving it by volume, what you're going to do, I don't really have, we're just going to figure out. Let me get a small bowl and I'll demonstrate here. For those of you who are cooking along with me, I did tell you that you are going to be able to go at a leisurely pace, did I not? I said it would be fine. It is fine. For anybody that is cooking with me, are we at a good place? We're not going too fast. Everybody's following along pretty well. We're good. Just making sure. All right, what you're going to do, okay? You're going to aerate this. Kind of just scoop it around. You can use a whisk if you really want to. And you're going to get, say I want to do, it says use 1/3 of a cup. You've got 1/3 of a cup here. I've got too much stuff in front of me. Let's make some room here. There. Okay. You're going to pour over your bag, your container, whatever you have, and you're just kind of going to scoop and pour. Lightly pour over the top of it. And you're going to take the back of a knife, and then this is your scoop. This is your 1/3. If you do this and scoop in like this, and then level, and this is your scoop, this feels heavier. You can have up to 30% more flour in here than you actually need for the recipe. I don't know why I mean, I don't even put it in my recipes, but I do list the grams. So I feel like that's kind of my out, right? But every baking recipe should say whether or not it is like a loose or packed or scooped or sifted flour or whatever that is, because it can mean very different things. And a lot of bakers just they don't explain that there's a technique. They don't say that there's anything different, but there is in fact something different. I do know a couple of bakers that will tell you to take a whisk to the flour to aerate it and then scoop in that. I think you can do that, but there's still some compression there. In my opinion, scooping with one and pouring into the other and kind of just like gently kind of shaking it in is going to give you the least compact amount of flour in your measuring cup, and then leveling it off and using that as your scoop. I think is the best way, in my opinion, to do it. But I mean, part of the problem too is like, and this is with anything, right? This is with anything with baking and cooking, is you have to have the experience to know what you're looking for. So like you can follow a recipe to a T, but if there's not instructions that give you like descriptions of what you're supposed to be smelling, what you're supposed to be looking for, what is the texture supposed to feel like or look like, it's really hard to know what you're shooting for. And then you go to make it and something might be too soft or have like too much flour in it. And then it's like, you're like, why is it like not very malleable or not sticky, right? If you were like, it should be a sticky dough and you're like, well, mine's not. It's probably because there was like too much flour in it. Or vice versa. If it's like really, really sticky and you know that it's supposed to be soft, but you're supposed to be able to touch it and it's not supposed to be able to like come off on your hands, then you're like, okay, there's not enough flour in it. And like just having that experience and having that knowledge just takes a while to get, unfortunately. So like I try my best to make sure that I have descriptions in my instructions, that I have the grams, that I have all that stuff in there. But yeah, there's a lot of techniques and there's a lot of knowledge that you can really learn. You can really only learn by doing. Yeah, unfortunately, it is what it is, right? I also found out, oh, okay, we've got, let's see. If a recipe tells you to add vanilla extract when melted chocolate is involved, it just makes the melted chocolate harden again. Because the vanilla is cold? Is that what you mean? Because the vanilla is cold, so it's gonna bring it up back to like closer to room temperature. You're having an issue. Oh, okay, here, let's see. I was stirring and then scooping from the container. I didn't know to pour into another cup. So if you're weighing flour, 1 cup is somewhere between 125 and 132 grams. One cup by volume of flour. The lower end is going to be lighter flours, and the upper end is going to be your heavier flours like rye and bread and buckwheat and all that kind of stuff. So just like keep it somewhere, if you can keep if they don't have it weighed by grams, keep it somewhere between 125 and like 132. And that is your cup. And then break that down from there into like half cup, quarter cup. You can do the math for that. And that might be helpful for your recipes. But that's typically where flour falls volumetrically. Hopefully that's helpful. That's probably more helpful than just saying like do it this way. So yeah. A bread recipe that doesn't list by weight. Yeah. Yeah. It is I feel like it's a lot of dishes, right? So like I'm just measuring everything on a kitchen scale. I'm like, and I haven't even touched, I've got these measuring spoons. I touched one so far. I tend to use the spoons more than I use the cups at this point, but yeah. Is that what I did wrong? I fixed it for the pie and it turned out great, but I panicked. Don't panic, just make it a little warmer. You're good. You're good. Okay, let's go back to this now that we've gotten way off track. Hopefully that was helpful to some people, but we're back on track now for anybody who's joining us at a later time. I don't apologize. I hope that was helpful. So now we need 2 tablespoons of our powdered milk, which is about 12.2 grams is what I have listed here. So we're going to go ahead and just do a little bit of this. Okay, that's good. The powdered milk is just going to help these scones retain moisture after they've baked. It's also going to add a little bit extra fat and a little bit of extra protein. If you're using, I have a whole milk powder, so I'm getting a little bit of the extra fat there. If you can only find like skim or fat-free or whatever that looks like, that is also fine. It's still going to help with moisture retention and structure because it is also going to have extra protein, right? So you're going to get a little extra structure, a little extra rise. And it's going to give you just a little bit of a softer crumb and retain moisture after baking. That is the purpose of the milk powder. If you cannot find milk powder or powdered milk wherever you are, that is okay. I know we have somebody that is cooking with me today that doesn't have it. That's okay. Not a big deal. Just leave it out. It's not important to this recipe other than kind of after it's baked. It's good for after it's baked. Okay. Next thing we are adding is our baking powder. Now, I'm using this specific baking powder. It's Rumford baking powder. I'm sure there are other brands of baking powders, especially not when we are out of the United States. You want to look for, and I quote, monocalcium phosphate. Okay? This is not a baking powder that I will be using. This is a store brand baking powder. Both of them say double acting. Double acting is very important for the baking powder in this recipe. However, this one lists sodium aluminum sulfate. We do not want aluminum in our scones. I'm going to tell you why. If you add a baking powder that has aluminum in it, right? So we're looking for aluminum-free baking powders. Rumford is aluminum-free, okay? The reason that we want to use aluminum-free is because if you have something with aluminum, it's going to react with your cranberries. It's going to change the pH, and you're going to have a nice blue swirl kind of bleeding off of your cranberry through your scone. Is that a horrible thing? Not really. Visually, it's not beautiful to have like blue, this like weird blue-gray color in your scone. Like, what is that? It could also develop a bit of a metallic taste because of the chemical reaction there. Have I experienced that metallic taste? Not really, but I have seen it change color. The reason that I went out and bought this instead of using a generic store brand was because I was like, why is this blue? What's going on here? What's all this, please? And so then I did a bunch of research and was like, oh, no aluminum, right? So we're looking for double acting aluminum-free baking powder. It basically changes the pH wherever the baking powder that has aluminum in it hits the cranberry and the citrus. Particularly is the cranberry. It reacts. There's a chemical reaction there, and then it changes color because it changes pH. So if you think about if you've ever had like cabbage, right? And you can change the pH of like cabbage. If you like change the pH of like whatever liquid it's in and you make it more acidic, it turns like a bright pink color. Or if you add something that's basic to it, something that's alkaline, then it's going to turn it to like a blue-green color. It's kind of doing that. The aluminum is increasing the pH and it's making it turn a little blue. That's what it is. It shouldn't technically mess with the flavor. It could mess with the flavor if there's enough baking powder. But it shouldn't technically mess with flavor. It's just a visual thing. And if you're sharing this with people or it's a Christmas something and you're baking it for whatever and it's not just for you, just know that if you do have aluminum in your baking powder, that you might have some random blue in your scones. I didn't want that, so this. Food science. Yeah, if you've ever, I guess it's kind of popular now to do cocktails, right? Where you have the butterfly pea flower or like Empress. Empress does that. Empress gin, where like when you add lemon juice to it and it turns from like a deep purple indigo color into that like really bright like fuchsia or magenta or whatever other like colored pink something, purpley pink that we're using. It changes the colors, and that's because you're changing the pH of that drink. And butterfly pea flower also does that. That's a super popular thing. Spirulina is another thing that's like blue, but if you like make whatever you have it in more acidic, it will also change color. There's like a bunch of that going around now where it's like, ooh, pretty, you know, like, or you get like an ombre kind of thing through the cocktail. If you add, like you do like a floater of lemon and it like changes it in like an ombre situation. It's like really big to do that now, but that's why it's changing. It's because you're changing the pH. Okay, this needs, let's see, 2.5 teaspoons, 6.5 grams of the aluminum-free double-acting baking powder. There's so many words there. That's a really long title for some baking powder. I'm gonna be honest. Okay. Okay. And then we're also going to need just a tad of baking soda. This is just going to give it some lift. Scones happen pretty quickly. The dough comes together pretty quickly. You're shaping it pretty quickly. You're getting it, I guess, like I'm tossing it into a freezer to chill the butter a little bit. But essentially, it's getting baked pretty quickly. And between the baking soda and the baking powder, you're in a good place. So anyway, this needs 3.2 grams or half a teaspoon of baking soda or bicarbonate of soda, bicarb soda, whatever you want to call it. Trying to be really careful with the leavening agents. I don't want to mess this up in a bad way. Would not be good. Yes, this is my container of baking soda. I use baking soda when we clean the floors and clean things around the house. So I have like those huge bags of baking soda instead of like a tiny little jar. And then we're gonna do half a teaspoon of kosher salt. I use Diamond Crystal kosher salt. If you are using a different brand of salt, please do it by weight. The salt granules, right? The crystalline structure of your salt determines how salty your salt is. Diamond Crystal kosher salt is flakier than, like, say, Morton salt. And so if you do, it's kind of the same thing as flour. If you do a teaspoon of Diamond Crystal kosher salt and a teaspoon of Morton salt has a more condensed structure, and it will be saltier. Whatever your food is will be saltier than if you use Diamond Crystal kosher salt versus the Morton salt. I do believe that I have listed in my ingredients Diamond Crystal kosher salt, just because oversalting things is not fun if you do that. So yeah, that is listed. I want to make sure that we are clear on that. Go by weight with salt as well, not just flour. Hey. Okay, I need 1.4 grams or a half of a teaspoon. Ooh, that was loud. Okay, we got my dry ingredients all weighed here. I'm also going to take my dough, the brown sugar and orange zest that's supposed to go into our dough is now going to go in. And we're going to give this just a pulse. Let it mix and incorporate, right? So we've incorporated our wet ingredients. We're going to incorporate our dry ingredients very well, get them uniformly mixed. And then we're going to take our butter out and we're going to start shaping and doing all of the other work. Okay. Did I plug this one in? I did. A baking powder with as many titles as Khaleesi. I really like that. Oh, hey, okay, so somebody in chat, thank you, Offbeat Bunny, that is also super true, says we have a recipe that has a similar, we were talking about the vanilla extract earlier, and how it kind of seized the chocolate a little bit because it brought the temperature down too much. But they said we have a recipe that has similar steps. You warm the vanilla extract by pouring hot water from a kettle into one dish and then putting the extract in a smaller dish and kind of like nesting it, right? But they say whatever you do, do not microwave or overheat the extract. It ruins the flavor. And that is true. And that is why whenever you see recipes like caramel, right? If you make a caramel, you make the caramel and then the vanilla gets added after. You're whisking the vanilla and salt and other things in after, because if it overheats, then it messes with the flavor. So that is also very important, yes. But somehow we can bake it, right? But yeah, it'll mess with the flavor if you overheat it. Very true. Okay, we're gonna turn the power on and give this a little pulse. I might mute the mic when I add the butter because it's gonna ping around this thing pretty loudly. It won't take long for it to stop being a problem, but I might do that. I might protect your ears. Mark, what do you mean? Looking for clarifying details, but I get the same pH causing blue. I've looked into enough chemistry stuff to know pH doesn't have a color. What do you mean by that? It's not the pH that like the pH is just a level on an acidic and alkaline scale. So something that's acidic, right, is going to be, I believe it's below, I want to say 6 is your base. Like it's either 6 or 7 is like water, right, where you are neutral. And then if you go into a higher pH and you get into the alkaline numbers, you're getting into like 7s and 8s and 10s and things like that. And then if you're getting acidic, then you're moving down into 5s and 3s and things like that. So like I think milk is like, it's like 3.5 or something like that. And citrus juice, like lemon juice, is even more acidic. Molasses is acidic. That is slightly acidic. It will help if you use baking soda. It will actually help with rise. Not as much as lemon juice will, but even molasses will help with some rise. I'm not sure what you're looking for with that, but it's just pH is the scale. And then that color changing is just the ingredient that you're using changes colors based on where it is on the pH scale. I'm not sure if that's helpful or not. All right, let's get the butter. Okay. I'm gonna start pulling my stuff. Now that I've done all of my weighing and measuring, I'm gonna clear my space just a little bit. Flour still. Okay. We're gonna bring our bowl. I'm gonna get my jam here. Got my bench scraper. Okay. Move this stuff out of the way. Keep out your heavy cream. If you're putting stuff away with me, keep the heavy cream out. You need it. You're not done with that yet. Okay. Garlic also turns itself blue, but it only turns itself blue if you're using an acid before you've cooked it. Okay, so you're looking for Mark, you're looking for the word anthocyanin. Anthocyanin. Anthocyanins are the chemical component, right? It's your molecule, compound, whatever it is, that reacts to pH. So anything that has that is going to react and color. Yeah, so if you use fresh garlic and you're cooking, this has nothing to do with this. If you're using fresh garlic and you add anything that's super acidic, lemon juice is typically, right? You like garlic lemon is like a combo. If you add the citrus to the garlic before it's cooked enough to break down and denature it a bit, it will start to turn blue. It also will do it more oh God, I don't remember if it's like the fresher the garlic or the older the garlic. One of those is also something that like, it may not happen all the time, but it's like if your garlic is like really fresh or really old, you'd have to look that up. Like, I don't know which one it is, but one of those things will like increase the probability of that blue happening. Okay, to the butter. Add your butter. So we've mixed in all of the ingredients that we added to our dry ingredients. Now we're adding our butter in. Just kind of spread it around. I am going to mute for a second because this is going to be loud. And I'm just going to pulse this until, okay, I should probably explain what I'm doing instead of just going mute. I'm going to pulse this until I get like little pea-sized, nothing bigger than like the size of a green pea. That's the kind of size that I'm looking for in here. And then this is going to get dumped into a bowl and the liquid is going to get added to this because scraping this out is not something I feel like doing today. So, okay, we're going on mute and then I will be right back. And we're back. It smells really good. All right, in she goes. Got some butter on the end of this guy. My ears. No, not your ears. I muted. Did I mute? Okay. We are now done with a food processor. I am not done because I am in fact going to make multiple batches of these scones today, but you are done with a food processor. Okay. Now what we're going to do, like all good Italians will know, you make a well. Make a well in the center. I'm going to try my best not to use my hands. Like I'm obviously going to have to use them when I start shaping, but for mixing, I want to keep all of my ingredients, including the butter, as cold as possible for as long as possible. So we've got our wet ingredients, and we're going to just start adding and kind of mixing in the middle of this well, pulling from the sides and mixing until we get kind of like a shaggy dough. Also going to try to pull every ounce of this out of the bowl. I'm not still muted, am I? You guys can hear me, right? The light's on. Okay, once this kind of is like, once it's almost completely incorporated, I don't know if you can see me. I'm left-handed, so I cover the camera. Once it's almost completely incorporated, which is just like in a couple more kind of folds, oops, you're gonna go ahead and turn it out onto your counter, which I'm gonna do right now anyway. Oh, okay, cool. So turn this out onto my counter. It's okay if it's not fully incorporated. We're gonna do that right now. I just like to get most of it mixed and then do the last of it when I'm shaping. Pull out your trusty bench scraper or fork or knife or whatever you feel like using just to make sure that you're actually incorporating all the ingredients and you don't have like a bunch of wet ingredients stuck to your spatula. And I'm just gonna kind of use this bench scraper to fold a little bit more. It's gonna kind of scrape underneath and fold. This might get a little sticky. That is a-okay. You can flour the surface that you're working on. If it starts to stick too much to the surface, you'll see me doing that to make sure that as I'm working the dough that it's not going to stick. Also going to grab my scale. I am going to make the 16-piece scones. This recipe makes 8 large scones or 16 smaller scones. Today I am doing the harder version of this just for the stream, I guess, and for the video so that people can see how to break this down more than just 8 pieces this way. Okay. Get my flour out. I'm gonna keep like a little pile of flour here and use that. Okay. So we're gonna get, bringing back the, thought I didn't need the scale, but I do need the scale if I'm doing this. So from now, for anybody who is cooking along with me right now, if you're doing your 8 scones, just bear with me while I separate these, but I'm gonna be essentially making the like version of 8 scones twice. So you just get to follow along when I start to actually shape the individual scones. So basically what I'm doing is I'm going to put this on a plate and weigh it. See how much we have. 746.8. Now I'm going to get a calculator. And I'm going to do whatever half of that is. Oh, my calculator looks different since I updated. 373.4. So that's what I'm shooting for. Okay. So now I've got 2. Enough flour. I've got 2 pieces here, equal pieces for my mini scones. And I'm going to kind of shape this into a square. So now if you are with me, you're making 8, or if you're making 16, we're here. We're at our two scone place. I'm gonna move this so that people who are looking at me dead on can see this. Okay, here we go. So okay, we've got, assume this is a single one for 8, or if you are following along with the 16, this is for a 16. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna kind of make a square, okay? And then you're going to cut this into 4 pieces. Okay. These are going to get shaped into a round and then flattened until they are about 5 inches. And I do have that in centimeters. 13 centimeters in diameter. It's going to end up being about, for the 16, it's going to be about an inch thick once you've stacked everything. For the 8, you're looking for about 10 inches in diameter, which is 25, almost 25 and a half centimeters, right? So you're looking for something that's about like yay big, like that. And that will end up stacking relatively tall eventually, but we'll get there. I'll get there with you. Okay, so I'm trying to get out to 5. Okay, so here's my first layer. I'm going to do this with all of these. I'm just going to kind of pat that out. Again, trying to work kind of quick. If you see like pieces of butter, that's okay. That's what you want. You want to see like pieces of butter. That's just going to be a nice little soft pocket for steam and stuff later. Okay. And I'm just kind of flouring the surfaces, just making sure that nothing is sticking too badly. That's good. The cool thing about, like, I know I'm flattening this down a little bit, but the cool thing about this is once we start stacking, it's actually going to also create layers. And it's going to get just a really nice like puff and flake that you wouldn't have if you just had like one chunk. Honestly, even if I am making these without like a kind of like the little ribbons of jam, I will still do some of the stacking. I'll probably do it like 2 or 3, like break it into 3 pieces and then like stack so that you get that flake. Okay, 3, 4. So if you are doing the 8 scones, you should have some nice big kind of layers like that you're working with that are all 10 inches in diameter, 25 centimeters and a little bit more than 25 centimeters in diameter. These ones here that I'm making are 5 inches in diameter, which are about 13 centimeters in diameter. Doesn't have to be perfect, just that's around what you're looking for. Okay, now one of these is your top. One of these does not get jam on it, and the other ones do. Okay, so I'm going to just put a little bit of jam on 3 of these. And I'm trying to be careful because I know that I have a second one to make, and I don't want to use all of this. And then you can get a knife and spread this around with a knife or a spreader, or whatever you want to use. You're basically just kind of going to take it and spread that layer of jam. Let's bring this more into camera so you can see what I'm doing. There you go. Okay. So you can see like it's not a sauce, right? Like we're not flowing off the sides of this. It's kind of like if you were going to make like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich kind of situation. Okay. One. And you don't have to be uber perfect about this and have like the same amount of jam. I don't know, marmalade, whatever. I don't know. You don't have to have the same amount of the cranberry on each layer. They can be different amounts. It's not a big deal. These are relatively rustic. Do we have any questions? For anybody who's doing this along with me, do we have any questions? For somebody who's just hanging out and wants to do this at a later date, do we have any questions? How are we feeling? Do you want to have 3 layers and have just like some really thick pieces or really thick ribbons of the cranberry? You can do that. That's okay too. Now we're going to stack. And then we've got our top. It's also okay if it starts to peek out the sides. They actually like turn out really pretty when they do that. Okay. So you're essentially going to have about a 5-inch, 13 centimeter diameter for if you're making 16, if you're doing the small scones. And they're going to be about an inch tall. So about 1 digit, right? Tip of your thumb, you're going to have about an inch, about 2.5 centimeters tall. Okay. And then that is going to get cut. And I'm actually going to just like use this for that, just to give me, I like to use metal ruler. That's the word I was looking for. I like to use metal rulers because they give really clean lines. I use them when I'm doing like cinnamon rolls and all sorts of stuff. I know that they have the like silpats that are all pretty and give you like the exact diameters of things so that you can like really get it correct, but whatever. And now I'm just going to cut. If you really want to have like nice cuts, you can have some warm water ready. I'm just going to have a wet paper towel because we're lazy like that. You can have some warm water and clean it in between cuts. I'll probably clean in between cuts, but I'm just going to kind of wipe. And then you're cutting. Essentially what you're doing, if you're doing the larger one, I apologize. You're going 10 inches in diameter, 25.4 centimeters in diameter, and you're looking for about 1.5 inches tall. Okay, 1.5 inches tall. It's about 3.8 centimeters, almost 4 centimeters tall. And then you're going to cut it in half and then into quarters, and then you're going to cut the quarter pieces in half, and you end up with 8. Okay. We're going to go right-handed for a second. We're going to do it. Look at me go. And then we're going to start loading these onto our baking sheet. Okay. Go. Yes, I'll do it this way. There's probably a better way for me to have done that, but that works for me. Okay, let's go ahead and make the second one. You get to watch me do this again. And then these are actually going to go in the freezer or the refrigerator. And you want the butter to kind of chill up. While that is in there, we're going to turn on the oven and get the oven going. Actually, I can do that now. Do I have anything in here? I don't. This is going to be up at 425, which is 218 Celsius. And we're going to get that going. Okay. So same thing here. I'm going to chop this into 4. Where does my bench scraper go? There we go. Chop this into 4 pieces. So you have 3 layers for your cranberry and then a sauce. I have a feeling that I just put flour all over my face. That's fine. These don't have to be perfect either. We're just going for relatively equal. These are scones. This is not a petit four. This is a scone. It can be rustic. It is not a big deal. As long as everything is relatively the same size, you are in good hands, in a good place. Now you want to try making peanut butter and jelly scones? Yeah, you should. If you're going to do peanut butter and jelly scones, let's think this through here. should not be talking about other recipes. It's fine. If you're gonna do peanut butter and jelly scones, I think you should get peanut butter powder. And instead of using the powdered milk, put in peanut butter powder. And then I would also suggest, how would you do this? I would suggest mixing peanut butter and powdered sugar, kind of like you would have a Buckeye, because peanut butter likes to get really melty if it's just by itself. Like you couldn't do a layer, like make jelly and then have jelly and peanut butter kind of swirl together, because the peanut butter gets really, really runny when it bakes if it's just by itself. So I would think that you would have to kind of make that into kind of like if you were going to do homemade Reese's or a Buckeye or something like that, and actually turn that into something that won't run when you bake it. But the fastest way for you to make that peanut butter and jelly is to make the jelly this way and then make the scone dough peanut butter flavored with peanut butter powder. That'd probably be your best bet if you were planning on doing that. Good luck, have fun. Okay, last one. If you're gonna make two, honestly, I should have put this under a little bit of saran wrap, cling film. I can feel that's a little bit hard just from sitting out, but we're moving relatively quickly. It should be okay. It's not gonna change too much, but if you feel like you're gonna go kind of slow when you're making this, if you're doing the smaller ones, I suggest covering the second half with some saran wrap. Okay, let's start spreading. So we'll get some of our jelly onto each of these. Really good. I love cranberries. What could possibly go wrong? Exactly. Bethany, how are we doing? I know you're cooking with me. How are we doing? How are you feeling? You feel confident? Feel like you're in a good place? I'm ahead of me. Just turn down the oven. Oh, she's ahead. Good. Good. Nice. So I've got some people in here cooking with me right now during the cook along, and she's already had her scones in the oven for at least 3 to 5 minutes. They start at a higher temperature and then they come down for the rest of the bake. So she's already ahead. That's fine. I understand. Do what you have to do. Last bit. And then we're going to stack and cut, just like with our other one. Okay. And now we stack. Double check our diameter here. We are good to go. We are very good to go. Let's do our half and our quarter and then cut our quarters in half, giving ourselves some guidelines. And then we cut. I'm gonna need this. I'm gonna do in half and then in half again. So now I have my quarters. And then we're gonna cut our quarters in half to make our eighths. And now I have 16 small scones that are fully ready to go into my refrigerator. I'm actually gonna put mine in my freezer just to move things along a little bit. But cleaning up the edges just a tad too. Also unnecessary, just doing it for visual appeal. Don't know if I have enough room. I'm gonna have like just one big like cake situation. I might do two. I'm gonna do 2 trays. I don't want to crowd the pan. The thing about the scones is that they are going to spread and puff, and I don't want them to be too close to each other. You can still break them apart once they cool enough, but it's not really worth it. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move a secondary. I've got a second tray here. If I was doing 8, I would just kind of set them up like that. But because I've got 16 here, there's just more than I want to do on one pan. So we're gonna have them kind of chilling like this. And now we're actually gonna have something that looks relatively symmetrical. These are gonna go into my freezer and my refrigerator for a couple of minutes just to get that. We've essentially warmed all of the butter up, right, while we were working with it. And now I want to get that back to chilled to help with spread. The other thing that we're doing to help with spread, the oven temperature, the high oven temperature at the start is going to help create a crust and help with spread before we bring it back down and then cook it to get the internal temperature correct and get it baked that way. Okay, so one of these is going in the freezer for a little less time than the refrigerator. And the other one can go in the refrigerator. I will be right back. Excuse me. Get to hear me opening doors. Okay, we've got one in the freezer. Okay, so I've got those chilling. Got my oven going up in temperature. I'm going to clean a little bit. We still have our topping that we need to add to the top of those. We're going to brush them with a little bit of heavy cream and then do the topping. If you want to do that before what I just did, you can. If you want to do it when they come out of the refrigerator, that's also fine. It depends on how quickly you're going to work. I'm just going to clean for now, because I made a mess. I didn't measure, ended up with 10 wedges. Hey, that's fine. That's fine. You might get some slightly more cooked than others, but they're still going to taste good. The bake might just be a little different if they're different sizes. Okay, didn't flatten when spreading the layers. It's going to be tasting. Oh, like the cranberry didn't like spread it. I'm sure it probably like spread out as you were like smushing the layers down on top of each other. That's probably a thing, right? I'm going to get the topping and a little bit of heavy cream ready for when those scones come out of the oven. Not the oven, refrigerator before they go into the oven so that we can give them a quick spread with some cream. The cream helps a little bit, like if you did like an egg wash, because there's protein and fat in the cream, it will help a little bit with browning. But really it's there so that our sugar topping will stick to the top of the scones. That's really why we're doing it. I'm just going to do like that much. Not a lot. If I need more, I can pour more. This is the point where I'm usually cleaning. But if anybody does anybody have any questions about the recipe that I might not have answered yet? Oh, yeah, you're good. Okay, so you like split them, made circles, put the jam in the middle, then kind of like squished it down and then started kind of pushing it into the correct diameter. Yeah, you'll be fine. You might have some like really big chunks of like cranberry in certain places, but honestly, like I'm not mad about that. That sounds great. I'm now up to temperature 425. 218 is where you're starting, 425 Fahrenheit, 218 Celsius. It is not fan on. I'm not doing convection. This is just straight up baking. We're not doing a forced fan here if you're in Europe. This is just we're just baking it in the oven. And then that is going to cook when we put them in. They're going to cook for about 5 minutes if you're doing the larger 8 piece. And after 5 minutes, you're going to take the temperature down and you're going to cook them for 12 to 15 minutes at 400 Fahrenheit or 204 Celsius. Because we're doing the 16, it's slightly different. It's still going in. We're still using the same oven temperatures, but they're going to go in for about 3 minutes before we bring them down for about 9 to 12 minutes to finish them off. And I'm going to set my timers for like the lower end so it catches me, and then I can kind of keep an eye on them. see, is there anything else that I can talk about? I can go through the recipe real quick and take a look at this. Oh, I guess it said to brush with the cream first before putting them in the refrigerator, but I didn't follow my own instructions. Either way it works. I guess it's definitely better to do the cream and the topping first, just because it can come right from the refrigerator and directly into the oven instead of sitting on my countertop and kind of getting a little warm again. So if you want like the least amount of spread and the most amount of rise, do the cream and the topping before they go into the refrigerator. But it's not going to be that big of a difference because it'll have set pretty well by then. Let's talk a little bit about storing. You can store these, I would say 3 to 4 days on the countertop before they start to dry out, which to me is a long time for a baked good. I feel like baked goods start to go bad like within the first day. And I say bad, stale. Stale is probably the better. Like they start to dry out within like the first day of baking them. Unless they're really high in sugar content, like moisture just it gets just sucked out of them. And I feel like they get really crumbly and dry. But these tend to stay pretty well for like 3, maybe 4 days. If you do not plan to eat them that quickly, or you want them to remain like as fresh as possible, you can do one of two things. So the first thing you can do is you can put them in your refrigerator, and then you've got them for maybe a week and a half without any issue. You can also take the baked scones and put them into basically keep them on the tray that they're on and stick them in your freezer and freeze them kind of individually, and then just toss them into a bag and keep that bag in your freezer. And that will last about a month to 2 months in the freezer before they start like getting a little freezer burny, and then you can't reheat them. To reheat the scones that you've frozen, if they're baked already and then you're freezing them, you're freezing a baked scone, you're going to take it out. You can stick it either, I guess you can put it on your counter and just let it come to room temperature. You can put it in an air fryer for a minute maybe, and it would probably heat up in under a minute pretty well. I'd probably put it at the lowest temperature possible. If you're going to do that, you can put them in the oven and bring them up to temperature. The fastest way to do it, though, is going to be in a handy dandy microwave. I would suggest, just because of the way that microwaves use heat to kind of like move all of the molecules around in something or in like whatever you're reheating, it'll agitate it a lot, and baked goods tend to do not well in the microwave. Put your microwave at the lowest possible power setting that you can. I know it's tempting to just like hit 30 seconds and start every time you use a microwave, but it does in fact have different power levels and different settings. If you have a fancy enough microwave, sometimes it will say bread and you literally have a bread setting. I would say like between 10% and 20% power at 15-second increments or at a bread setting will be your best bet. And just cook it in the microwave until it's warm, and you can kind of press on it and it will spring back and it's like nice and soft. Like that's when you know the center has fully baked through, when it's like nice and soft. If you overcook something in the microwave, the second it cools down, it will start to dry out and it will get actually like tough and hard because you've like literally like rebaked, you've like cooked it. And we're not trying to recook, we're trying to reheat. So keep that in mind when you do go to bring them back up to temperature from freezer to wanting to eat it. The other thing, there is another option that has nothing to do with already baked scones. You can actually freeze the scones before you bake them, and then you can bake them whenever you want. Now, the important thing about this is that they are not going to rise as much as they will if you bake them fresh. They will still be nice and soft, but they are going to be denser. This also happens with biscuits. I know we talked a little bit about like Southern biscuits. American style biscuits are basically scones that use a lot of the times buttermilk and are not sweet. So if you have an unsweetened scone, if you have your biscuits, they do the same thing, where like you can kind of cut them, make it all nice and fresh, cut them, and then freeze them and say, hey, you know, I'm going to bake them, you know, right from the freezer, and I'll have them, you know, basically to save. They don't cook up as well. They're still good. They're still like tasty. The texture is still pretty good, but they're not going to be, you're not going to get as soft of a crumb, and they're not going to get as much rise. And it's because you're not using something that, like, you're not using yeast or something fermented as a leavener. You're using a chemical leavener with the powder, the baking powder, and the baking soda. They just don't last as long, even when it's double acting. And heat is the thing that causes that second reaction for leavening in the way of baking powder. It's still not going to do as well, and they tend to kind of like relax over time. So the longer they're in your freezer, the less rise that you're going to get. You can do that. It is absolutely an option. But it is not going to be as, it's just not going to be as like perfect tasting. I would rather bake them and reheat them than just freeze them before they're baked and bake them every time I want one. Also, like, I know people do that a lot for like cookies. But yeah, it's not as good. It's not as good. Just FYI. Oh goodness. The scones won't last a month. Yeah. This is a just in case. Just in case. I have no idea what time I put. Let's see. This has been ready for, okay, 8 minutes. I guess the stuff in the ones in the freezer are probably ready to go. So I'm going to pull them out. I'm going to baste them with a little bit of the cream, put the topping on them, and then I'm going to toss them right into my oven. Let me go grab those out of the freezer real quick. You see my face? Hi, hi. Okay. We've got these here. I'm going to move super quick. We're just going to give them a little bit of a baste. I'm not trying to go down the sides. I'm just trying to get the top. And now remember, these are going to be cold. So that cream is going to kind of get a little bit sticky. On the right side. It's going to get a little sticky. If you put them in the freezer too chill, then it might harden to the top of these. So you have to work quickly, like I am right now. If some pours down the sides and like it's on the baking sheet, that's fine. That's not a big deal. There's plenty of topping. You will be good. I promise. Let's do just a little bit more on these guys. I want like a good amount. It's going to get nice and crunchy on top. Okay. And into the oven. I'll set my timer for 3 minutes. Oops. Not what I meant to do. There we go. Timer. Timer, 3 minutes. Start. Okay. So I've got that going. And now I'm back to standing here. Thanks for the thanks for telling people about that mindfunk. I guess for anybody who's seeing this at a later date, or for all of the people here who are here with me live, I do have a Patreon that helps support the content that I produce. It helps with this. It helps with my website. I also have an Instagram. The handle is a_little_spoon for Instagram. The website is alittlespoon.com. And I really would love to keep my website ad free. I've been at a point where I could have ads on my site and have that be a way to make income. But I hate ads with the fire of 1,000 suns. And I really intend to never do that. And Patreon is kind of part of that. So it's definitely a way to support me and also get the best of not having ads on a website and just having a better user experience. Outside of that, outside of supporting content and supporting the work that I'm doing, you also do have a couple of bonuses. We have a get together kind of once a month. We do like a little bit of a hangout. We'll do a video chat. Sometimes if I'm working on recipe development or not typically photography, but usually recipe development, if I have a day where I just kind of like want to mess around and it's not a super heavy day, I will go in and have like a video chat, and you can kind of just come in and hang out with me when I'm doing recipe development. We have a private Discord that is attached to the Patreon. You kind of just go from Patreon and it moves you into your Discord. If you have a Discord account, you can also make a Discord account that will connect. And we have a bunch of different channels that we just talk about, hey, I'm traveling to this city. Does anybody know about good restaurants here? And we'll kind of give recommendations. We've got recipe sharing and recipe help. I put a lot of behind the scenes. I ask my Patreon members a lot for like, hey, what do you guys want to see coming up to get ideas for recipes and for more cook-alongs. And we all in all just kind of hang out. It's a really solid group of people. We have a lot of fun. And I guess I didn't want to set tiers because we're kind of like at the beginning of this. That's my timer. Let's change this down and set a new timer. I didn't want to have like a bunch of different tiers where people were kind of like locked out of different things, at least at the very beginning. So you can join as a Patreon member and support for as low as $1 a month, and go up to, I think the highest I did was like $20 a month, which is obscene. Like nobody needs to do that. And you can support and just not take part in anything. Like if you're like, look, I totally am here for the content, but I do like the idea of going to your website, but having no ads. And you want to support that, you can do that. If you do want to join in and actually like make friends and hang out, you're welcome to do that as well. But any tier gets you access to all the things. Yeah. Welcome. I don't know. Thank you for mentioning it. Thank you for forcing me to talk about myself here on the internet. Oh, and that's true. I didn't even think about that. You can also you can gift Patreon memberships now. That was not a thing earlier, but it is now. Yeah, you can gift if you want to. If you have somebody in your life, a foodie in your life that really likes to cook, really likes to listen to me talk about anthocyanins and all of the like pHs and things like that, all of food science. You can gift a 3-month membership, so $3. Be like, hey, here's 3 months to this, and they might enjoy themselves for that amount of time. Could be something nice to do if you really feel like doing that. I'm great at this. I'm gonna check out these. Let's see where we are. Ooh, they're looking good. I'm excited. I love scones, friends. Let's see. We've got about 10 minutes left. I do want to be able to take these out of the oven and show the people who are here not during the live what they look like. Typically, I would kind of end here and be like, now bake them. But this is such a quick bake that I think I'm just gonna, I guess we'll just chill. Does anybody have any questions about anything I talked about today? I can do a little blurb about the history of leaveners, of chemical leaveners in baking. Do we want to learn about that today? When we talked about pH, we might as well talk about all the other stuff. Does anybody want to hear about that? I'll only do it if you say yes. Because like learning. Yeah. Yeah, I guess originally, when whatever it was, yes. Originally, when bakers were baking, right, and they weren't using yeast and they didn't have leaveners, they did start using baking soda, right? So we're using baking soda as a chemical leavener, and you need to have acids in order to create that reaction, right? All of that rise. And so if a baker wasn't using something that was acidic and they put baking soda in, it wouldn't do anything. And they were getting frustrated that they were kind of limited. And not only are they limited to baked goods with acids in them, right? They're also limited by time because baking soda, that reaction happens really fast. And within 20 minutes, you're losing like 40 to 60% of the leavening power. Sorry, you're losing the leavening power. And so they had to do everything really, really fast. And that's incredibly frustrating. So then they came up with cream of tartar. And they started messing around with that, right? So you have essentially you have baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, and then you have a weak acid that are combined along with like anti-caking agents, so like cornstarch. You have those combined, and now you don't need to have an acid. It's going to just react once you add liquid. But again, we're stuck because everything has to happen fast. So you're not limited by your ingredients, but you still are limited by time. And there was more frustration there. So then they started adding in, that's when we created baking powder. And that's when we started adding in the phosphates and the aluminum sulfate and all that kind of stuff. Monocalcium phosphate, aluminum, guess what was the other one? Aluminum sulfate, sodium aluminum sulfate. They started adding those in so that it would be double acting. Those ingredients specifically react to heat. So you kind of get a reaction at the beginning, right? When liquid or acid or a liquid that is acidic meet the sodium bicarbonate, the baking soda, and then you get a secondary reaction with heat once it hits a specific temperature and it goes above that when you're baking, usually. It will create a secondary rise, and that's where the double acting comes from, and that's baking powder. The more you know. Time is money. I agree. Guys, these look really good. I need scones now. I still have 6 minutes. It took 4 minutes. What do I do? If I could pick up the camera and show you inside here, you'd be very happy. You'll get to see it when they're done, though. Don't worry. Don't worry. How many scones could I eat? Let's be honest. You could eat as many scones as you want if you really, really put your heart into it. Anything is possible. I guess what is the most number of scones that I've eaten in a single sitting? Probably about 2.5 of the big scones. So 5 of these, they're so good. Whatever. It's fine. Especially during recipe testing. During recipe testing, you're eating everything. Oh my gosh. Oh no, Sage. Try letting your yeasted bread rolls rise 20 minutes at room temperature instead of in the oven with the light on Turkey Day. Was your house too cold? 78 degrees is the optimal, between 78 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Apologies for my Celsius people, is optimal proofing temperature. About 70, yeah. Too cold. It would have needed about double, if not triple the time to get to where you wanted it to be. Does the family help give feedback on recipe tests? Yes. My husband basically does. And it's basically me and my husband. We are a 2-person team when it comes to that. I have been known, if I've got a lot of testing going on, I have been known to make 5 or 6 recipes and have friends come over and taste them so that I know kind of where I am, and I've gotten like feedback and tweaking from those. It doesn't happen too often because I tend to do like 2 at a time, like 1 or 2 at a time, but sometimes I just get like, I get in a tizzy and I make like a whole bunch of different recipes. Okay, for anybody who's a bread maker or a baker, I've seen, and honestly, I may get, but I'm not sure. You can get warming mats that are meant for gardeners. They have the bread proofing. They're called proofing mats for the bakers, but they're wildly expensive, like somewhere between $100 and $200 or something ridiculous like that. That are like proofing mats for houses that are less than the optimal temperature. But you can also get, they're for gardening and they're for starting plants. So for like starters and going from seed into your starters or your seeders, or I don't know what they're called. But basically like your little guys. When you're doing that and you're kind of like propagating or growing from seed, you can get warming mats and they're cheaper because it's for a different industry and they don't have to look pretty. They're just like black or green. Like they're not like all beautifully constructed for, the homemaker's kitchen or something like that, where everything has to be like aesthetically pleasing and beige, much like this behind me. It's just a mat and it's meant for gardening and they're cheaper and they're supposed to be great. And I've honestly contemplated about getting one of those because my house tends to get relatively cold in the winter as well. Only our winter is much shorter, so I'm not as like worried about it. I'm gonna take these out. These are done. I did put this at 12 instead of 9 minutes, so the bottoms are a little bit browner than I would like. But there we go. Our scones. We're gonna let them chill just a little bit. Yeah, we're nice and that one has my name on it right there. I'll probably eat one of the sloppy ones just so somebody else doesn't have to eat it, but these look good. Yum. Scones. Now I have to wait another some odd minutes to let them cool because if I tried to lift this off of the tray right now, that would be a problem. Your house is a breezy 69, no wonder you get terrible proofs. Yeah, that's too low of a temperature in Fahrenheit. That's too low of a temperature for proofing. If you don't have like a warm place in your house, what you can do is take the trays in your oven and move them all low or high, probably low because usually the rack on the bottom doesn't come out of your oven. But you can move them all down and turn this on the lowest that you have. Sometimes they have a proof setting. Sometimes we don't. That's okay. You can take this and put it on the lowest possible temperature that you can for just a couple minutes and then leave the door open, get like the ambient temperature of it and put it in when it's somewhere around 80 Fahrenheit. Oh. I wanna really hot. So basically, let's do we can do a little ASMR, right? Grab a knife so you guys can know. So like we have essentially this like really soft center, but you get like the nice kind of like crispy. I don't know. I'm trying to do things. You get a nice like crispy, crunchy sugared top, and then you get like the nice soft scone on the inside, and it's just like a really nice contrast. I don't know if you could hear it. It's fine. Bakes SMR. Bakes SMR. Seeding mat ordered. Yay! Oh, seedling. There we go. Seedling. That was the word I was looking for. Cool. Okay. Which one do we want to eat? Do you want to choose? I'm going to bring my husband in here so he can decide which one we're going to eat. I feel like this one looks like it probably got baked the most, but it's also pretty high. And I kind of like the height on it. Which one looks the absolute worst so that I can not give it to other people and we can just eat it? Probably this one looks like it shifted a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's still really soft. I just want to like show the inside in some way. Oh, that's hot. That's hot. That's hot. Ooh. That's not very good too. Ooh. Okay. Here we go. Yay, scones. That's kind of what you're going for. You get this nice ribbon in different layers. It's like nice and soft. Here, it's hot. It's hot. So just like be careful with it. That's tasty. I'm happy. Okay. Et voila. Scones. Thank you very much to the people who are not watching this live. Don't eat the whole thing. You better share with me. That's the only one we get to eat right now.
I mean the edges so you can have the middle.
Aw, that was nice. I do like crunch though. I like the whole thing. Okay. Thank you very much for joining me. If you found this in a playlist and you're not here when it was live, for those of you who are here live, I'm just going to say my outro, and then we can hang out for another couple minutes while these chill and I get the second batch in the oven. For those of you who are here, decided to make these with me as part of a playlist, like a video playlist, and it's not live, I'm going to say goodbye to you now. Thank you so much for joining me today while we made these cranberry-orange cream scones. I hope that you take these at whatever time of year with you, for family, for friends, for yourself, your morning cup of coffee or tea, or however you feel like doing that. I hope you enjoy them. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me in either the comment section of this video or find me on my website, alittlespoon.com. You can find me on Instagram. The handle is at @a_little_spoon. I do put all of my recipes on Instagram, so you do not have to go to my website if you really don't want to find these specific, even this one, even this recipe, it is on Instagram. I typically will post photos for a recipe and then we'll post the actual recipe there. But you do miss out on the FAQs. So that's why I link the website recipe there. But there's a bunch of information. Most of what I talked about today is in the FAQ section of this recipe on the website. So if you're ever wondering about something, first place you can go is there. Second place you can go, or first place if you really want to, you can contact me. You can DM me on Instagram. You can send me something through my contact page on the website, or you can comment right underneath this video. Again, thanks for joining, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.